Hi, good morning, Miss Baccari.
Good
Let,
morning.
let me begin by welcoming our grade twos from Madame Pecchia's class, our grade threes from Miss Bolzer's class, and our grade sixes from Mademoiselle De Loretto's class. It is such an honor to have you here today on our very last day of Catholic Education Week. And no matter what's going on in the world, a good book can always provide insight, comfort, and a welcome escape. So, and your book does exactly that. So, thank you for being
Thank you.
here today. We're so excited.
I'm so excited. Thank you so much for having me. Hello, everybody.
So, Miss Baccari is an alumni from our YCDSB board, and she is going to begin by sharing her wonderful book, which, by the way, I received in the mail first by Amazon. So I'm so excited and so honored. And whenever you're ready, you may begin.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I think it's a miracle that your book arrived this morning because it was meant to be for this broadcast. So thank you so much for having me read today. I'm so honored to share this with you. This was a story that I wrote at the beginning of when this lockdown happened and everybody was staying at home and the news that students were not able to go to school and would be doing this online learning, which is so exciting because I guess it brings us this opportunity today. So I'm really grateful for that. And I'm just really happy to share this story. It was something that I wanted to share with all of you so that we can have this message of hope and this idea that as we see with winter changing into spring and bringing us birds are singing and sun and all the wonderful things that we look forward to this time of year. It's something that we can really highlight and really cherish about this time of year. So with that, I will start with the story. It's called Then the Robin Sang, and I'm sure many of you have heard robins singing outside your window or when you've been able to go outside. So it's a really lovely reminder of nature and just that this time of year is really something to cherish. So Then the Robin Sang by Ava Baccari and Gianluca Tequila, who is also an alumna. We both went to St. Joan of Arc High School together, and I went to Blessed Trinity in Maple, so that's where I'm from. Then the Robin Sang. It was March 11, 2020. The streets were empty, the stores were closed, and the people no longer went outside. But spring didn't know, and so the flowers continued to bloom, and the sun shone, and the birds returned home. There was a time when pets couldn't go outside. It lasted for only a short while, but in the moment, it felt like an eternity. It was the beginning of spring, when the last layer of snow finally melted, leaving patches of rusty brown grass for pets to run through and plenty of puddles to jump in. So as you can imagine, everyone was excited to head outdoors after hibernating inside all winter. So I'll show you the pictures. If you can see closely, this is a little dog who's waiting in the window, and right here we have a cat. The cats waited patiently by their windows to reunite with their neighborhood friends. The dogs, too, were anxious to be let out. They could only go outside for brisk walks during the cold months and were ready to spend their days chasing squirrels once again. So there's a cat just waiting by the window, looking outside. But spring came and no one was let outside. It was a strange feeling. All the signs of the changing season were there. The flowers were beginning to bloom, the sun stayed out later, and the sky held its bright blue color longer. Clearly, spring hadn't forgotten to show up. So what was causing the delay? So we have a nice spring scene here. Oh, I wonder if you can see that. There's a park there, but nobody's in it, and there's some flowers blooming. Even the squirrels were confused. At first, they enjoyed the newfound freedom of an empty backyard. They chased each other around while the little pups pressed their noses against the glass, wagging their tails and whimpering to get outside to join in the fun. So here you can see there's a little dog. Ooh, I'm going to try and have that more clear. It's kind of backwards for me, so it's hard to find out if I can show you properly. But there's some squirrels running around. But without any pets to play with, the squirrels quickly grew bored. And one day, they stopped showing up altogether. The pups longed for visitors and sat by their windows all day, hoping for a butterfly or a bumblebee to pass by to keep them company. And here we have a dog who's all bored. He doesn't even want to play with his bone or his ball. No one was allowed to come over to play, and there were no park dates or playmates to help pass the time. The pets were all alone in their solitude and wondered if they would ever see their friends again. Their spirits were low, and no amount of treats could lift them. When they weren't feeling sad, they were bored, and it seemed like life would go on this way forever. Then one morning, while it was still dark, a familiar sound broke the silence at dawn. It started out as a soft warble, then grew loud enough to wake a sleepy cat stretched out on a windowsill. A tiny robin was perched on a branch outside the window, and she was singing to the lonely cat. And look, we have a cat here who's come alive now that there's been a bird. She spotted a bird outside singing to her. But she wasn't the only one. A whole choir of birds began to sing a hymn loudly and proudly for all pets across the neighborhood to know that they weren't alone. It was the song of spring that carried with it the hope of the new season. And there we have all these birds. They're hanging out, gathering around in the neighborhood, making sure everyone knows that they're there to sing to them. The robins had returned home from a long and cold winter and noticed that the pets were still inside. So they serenaded their old friends by the windows to signal that spring was waiting for them on the other side. And the birds kept singing until one day the pets headed outside to join them. And here we have the dog. He's reunited with his squirrel friends. His ball, he's all happy. It's sunny. The sun is shining. And everyone can be outside and play together again. The end.
What a sweet, wonderfully inspiring story. I could certainly relate because I have both a cat and a dog. And you show such compassion for animals. And you push the reader to creating their own understanding of reality and a sense of hope. So thank you for sharing this book with us. Now we will allow some time for a question and answer period.
Absolutely, I would love that. So I'll read the first question. How long did it take you to write the book, and what kept you going in times when you really wanted to give up? So this question came from Giada. So thank you so much for asking this question. I think it's a really important one because it can depend on what type of space you're in, what type of mood you're in, how what you're feeling at the time, and that really can lead to how creative and how much time you want to dedicate it to write something. So as I said before, it was the beginning of this, the change of this lockdown. And one afternoon I was feeling just, pretty sad about what was happening. And, I'm not able to see my friends. You can't go out, and if you have grandparents, you're not able to visit them because you want to take care of and ensure that seniors are safe during this time. And so I was just feeling like I was listening to a lot of bad news. And I'm sure a lot of you have the news on TV, and if you're checking Twitter constantly like I was doing, it just seemed like it was more and more sadness that was, out in this world. And so I felt like, I think I need a really positive story. And so I kind of wrote this story thinking, what's something that I want to hear right now? And at the time, I remember I was, sitting at my desk, and I have a cat as well. And he was looking outside the window, and there was some squirrels just running around, and I could just see my cat look at them. And I wonder if he was thinking, oh, I wish I could go outside, and look how free these squirrels felt in comparison to him who was inside. So it just seemed like this is a nice little story. And so that's kind of where it all came from. And then that afternoon, I just started writing, and I finished the story within maybe a couple of hours. And then, of course, there's time, thinking of, like, as the second part of your question, times when you really wanted to give up, you start writing and you think, oh, I don't know if I like this sentence, or is this going to make sense? Or you kind of grapple with maybe larger issues like, there's a lot of sadness and people going through difficult times right now. Do they really need a story like this? Is it too lighthearted in comparison to the heaviness that a lot of people are feeling? And so I definitely struggled with that doubt. But then I really, after talking to a couple people, and I have friends with kids and friends who are teachers as well. So I shared the story with them, and I just said, this is my first draft. What do you think? Is this something that, you think your students would enjoy? Would you read this to your children? I had one friend who's also a teacher, and he has a nephew, and he's one of my first readers. And I said, please read this to your nephew. I need to know what he thinks of it. And just hearing their reaction and that they felt it really spoke to them during this time made me think that this is something that I should continue with and continue to publish. Okay, next question. What happens when you cannot write and you try and nothing comes out? Renee, that is a very good question. This happens all the time as a writer, and I'm sure, if whether you're writing a story or you're working on a school assignment, maybe you set some time aside, like, okay, from this time to this time, I'm going to sit down and write this. And then you either on your computer or you have your pen and paper and nothing comes. And so a lot of times what I like to do, if I need inspiration or if I just need to take a breath to really figure out what it is that I'm trying to say, I love going for a walk. Because I find that being out in nature, all of a sudden, because a lot of times when you're sitting down and trying to write, you're trying to force something, you're really in your head. But by the time you get outside, you're walking, and maybe it's cold out, and so you're feeling the wind blow in your face, and then maybe you hear a bird singing, or because it's spring, you start seeing some flowers, and you really start paying attention to what's going on around you, and all of a sudden, all of the things that you're feeling, the blockages that you may have been feeling, you kind of forget about that because you're just so present and in the moment outside. And so that I find that really refreshing. So then after maybe about a 20-minute walk, if I'm able to, I'll come back and sit at my desk, and then I'll just start. And maybe that's given me a new perspective, or maybe it's given me, maybe I saw something that was really interesting that I want to then write about. So just starting from there, but definitely just being patient with yourself, because sometimes you're just not in the mood, and then give yourself some time and come back to it later, and you'll be able to. Okay, so a new question. So what is your day-to-day motto to keep you so positive and productive during this time? So I feel like I have a few of them, and a lot of it is, staying in touch with people and staying connected, and whether that is, calling someone on the phone if you're with your parents and you can talk to them over dinner. Kind of the beauty about this time is that there's no real separation of our days, where we had, morning, leaving for school, coming home at the end of the day, and talking to your parents, or maybe your sibling, or anyone who you're around. I find just being able to check in with them, and if I'm feeling a little bit sad or just feeling, unsure of what this time means, and I'm trying to find meaning, or trying to feel like what I'm doing is contributing to make this world better, I'll just kind of check in with them. And then as well, I just feel, the idea of following your heart and going with your gut, because usually, if you're doing something and you feel happy or you feel inspired by it, you're like, okay, I'm onto something here. I'm going to keep going with that. So I find that really just following your heart, and if something is bringing you joy, and you tell someone about it and it makes them happy, then you're like, okay, maybe I can keep doing this to more people, because hopefully it will keep inspiring them and make them feel, make them smile even just during this time. That's something, making someone laugh, not to be taken for granted, because we can all use a little bit of humor and levity right now. Ooh, this is a good question from Renee. So who was an author you looked up to? So one of my favorite authors, who's a Canadian author, is Robert Munsch. I'm sure many of you have heard it or heard some of his works. The Paper Bag Princess is definitely a favorite. I Love You Forever is one of, my favorite classic books. Right. So those for sure. And it's funny because when I think I was in junior kindergarten, Robert Munsch came to my school and read one of his books, and I just remember being so excited and so inspired, and loved the idea of having an author in my class, and the joy that it brought hearing a story live. And that's really what inspired me to want to write and do this one day. So for me, being able to reach all of you today, even though it's virtually, is just such a dream come true. And I hope one day when we're back in classrooms, I can come and visit and read more stories, because that would really be a treat. So this week is Catholic Education Week in Ontario. This year's theme is Igniting Hope. How does your book communicate a message of hope? So I think this is really beautiful, and a lot of times you start out with an idea and you don't really know where it's going, and afterward, once it's done, you look back and make all these connections, like, oh, this really speaks to my faith, or this really speaks to, I know when I was really low and needing some hope, this is exactly what I needed. So a lot of times you don't even realize, the idea of a bird singing just seems so normal, because you wake up, you hear a bird singing, and you don't really think much about it. But the idea of this hope and renewal, and we think of spring as this time of creation. We come out of winter, we're hibernating, and all of a sudden we're outside. We're able to really just be in nature and really see it come to life. So whether there's we see caterpillars and then they're becoming butterflies, and we see all these birds coming back. It really just reminds you that there is beauty in nature, and that comes from God, and we're just so lucky to be able to witness that. And I think this idea of hope is really something that we're able to share and appreciate it.
And hope is really the backbone of survival, and is what gives us hope. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions? Do we have time for one more? Okay, go ahead.
Sure. So I see a question: how has faith helped you beyond your high school years and your career? So this is something that is, it's like a constant lesson, because a lot of times you really want something. So maybe you really wanted to go see a show, or maybe right now you really want to see your friends, and you feel downhearted because that's not able to happen. And so you may think that, oh, what's the point? And, maybe there isn't something out there, and just really feeling this lack of hope, really. And so then, something comes through. Maybe, you were really sad, but your phone rang, and a friend who you really wanted to hear from called you, and you're like, oh, that was exactly what I needed in this time. And, maybe with my career and really wanting a job, or really wanting to do something, and it didn't work out, and then something better came along. It just really reminds you that, maybe it's not something that you know of right now that's working for you, but in the end, the best thing will come of a situation. So it definitely helps you keep your faith that things will work out, and if you just keep doing what you love and persevering, and trying to make your friends and make yourself happy, and just bring meaning to your life and to those around you, that is the path that we all should be on, and it will help us when we're feeling at our lowest and need something to pick us up.
Okay, thank you so much. You've been so inspiring, and this is definitely one of my favorite books. Every student at Christ the King, this book right now. I have read it times, and I love the serenading of the birds and how they reunite the animals at the end. And you are so inspiring, and you give us hope. And this is exactly what we need right now. Thank you for writing this book. All the proceeds go to Villa Charities. And so it's available on Amazon, and it's available in our school library. I'd like to read it to you again, boys and girls. Thank you for joining us today. I'm so grateful and so honored. God bless you.
Thank you.
Perhaps the students can write their stories of hope and share them on the library website for the other students at CTK to read your own little sweet stories of hope. We have the most creative thinkers at Christ the King, and thank you for doing this with us today. We're so honored. God bless.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to have done this, and
with the technology, and there's Mademoiselle De Loretto, Miss Pekya, and also Mademoiselle Golzar. Thank you. Students, stay well. I love you all. Thank you, Mrs. Baccari. Keep writing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I hope to see you all soon. Be safe, everybody.
You too.
Bye.